Hellwagon joins us from Bucknuts. You got to catch his work there at 247 Sports. He is a Big Ten senior writer as well. All right, Steve, we saw the big game that we were waiting for a couple weeks ago. Don't think that we've talked since Ohio State and TCU. It was certainly a game in which Nick Bosa made his presence felt, and that's not going to be the case for the next 8 weeks or so. The distinction that I'm making in the Bosa play versus some of the play of some of the other fine players up front is not necessarily the athleticism, because they've got arguably the best defensive front in college football and the deepest, but it just seems like Bosa's at another level in regards to you could put him on an NFL field tomorrow and he wouldn't be out of place. So they're really going to miss not only his athleticism, but just his ability to play at that level on a college football field. He's just at another level that they're going to need other guys to fill in to make those kind of plays, those kind of disruptive plays.
Definitely. I think it'll be a committee approach. They'll have Chase Young will start the game. Again, at defensive end, Jonathan Cooper's been starting at the other end position. You bring in Jayshon Cornell, you bring in Tyreek Smith off the bench. And I think in some pass rush situations, you may put Draymond Jones out at defensive end as well. And, or however you want to do it with the different packages, because you've got some pretty good defensive tackles. With Robert Landers, Devon Hamilton in the middle, you got some flexibility. So this is going to be a tough test for them with Penn State. I've been impressed with what I've seen at Penn State. I've watched all 4 of their games, their offensive line. And I would say this about their team across the board. I don't see a lot of All-American, talent, not a Saquon Barkley, who just leaps off the page at you. But I see a lot of guys who are very good players, potentially all Big Ten caliber players. So it's going to be a great challenge, I think, for Ohio State, and particularly up front, trying to contain the quarterback, Trace McSorley, keep him in the pocket and not let him get outside, break, contain, and make plays with his feet. Alex Grinch, Ohio State's co-defensive coordinator the other day, had a very good comment that you may have the right defense called for the first play that Penn State calls, but when he breaks contain or takes off out of the pocket, it triggers a second play with guys coming back to the ball and all these other things, and that's where he's most deadly, most dangerous, and you better have a plan in place for that second play as well. So I guess we'll see how Ohio State, if they can make Penn State have to go to that second play, how they defend it.
Yeah, he's a kid that I don't necessarily know how he translates to the next level, but as a college quarterback, he has put it all together in regards to arm talent, mobility, escaping the pocket, improvising at the right times, leadership, gamesmanship, tough kid. He pretty much checks all the boxes for a college quarterback. Steve, you mentioned briefly the Penn State offensive line. I would point to the Penn State offensive line versus the Buckeyes defensive front as being what's been the biggest advantage for this football team, meaning Ohio State, over the last few years. Penn State came off the scholarship issues. They started to build back. They built in other areas, and the offensive line seems to have been the last one to catch up with the rest of the team. But this would certainly, you would think, would prove to be the best Penn State offensive line that we've seen in years.
Definitely. They're starting 2 juniors and 3 sophomores on their offensive line. They've got Ryan Bates is their left tackle, 6'4", 302 pounds. I've been very impressed with what I've seen out of him. Connor McGovern was the center last year, kind of like Ohio State, only he moved in the opposite direction Michael Jordan did for Ohio State. Jordan moved from guard to center. Connor McGovern has moved from center to right guard, and that allowed them to put Michael Manet, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, 6'4", 298-pound sophomore. He's playing the center position. And then, of course, Steven Gonzalez is at left guard. He's an outstanding player as well. So their offensive line is really starting to come into its own. Again, as I said, they don't have anybody who you just say offhand, that's their All-American. And I think that's true really across the line. We've got a lot of very good to great players on this team. There's no question about it.
It's been a few weeks since we talked about Dwayne Haskins. I think we were leading into the TCU game. Obviously, they had some issues on offense. It wasn't due to poor play at the quarterback position, then really exploded with some big plays downfield in the passing game in the second half when they broke out to the lead and took control of the game against TCU. And other than that, Dwayne Haskins has been lights out. Do you recall an Ohio State quarterback? And I know this is a difficult question because the sample size is so small, but just playing at this level has just he's been almost flawless.
Yeah, he has been uncanny so far. I think he's completing about 76% of his passes, which is an outrageous number, and 16 touchdowns, 1 interception. In Big Ten history, the only guy with more touchdowns through 4 games was Kyle Orton, had 17 for Purdue in 2004 through his first 4 games. Now, again, some of this is the caliber of the competition. I don't think Rutgers, Oregon State, and Tulane are going to combine to win very many FBS games this year. But, again, cracking myself up just thinking about it.
Certainly, Rutgers, if they can't stay within 6 touchdowns of Kansas, they certainly are in for a rough year.
Yeah, they definitely are. So, at any rate, he's done an outstanding job of being a leader for this team as a third-year sophomore, a guy that everybody can depend on. They have great confidence in him. So I think that, again, they are going into another very difficult situation, difficult environment. The thing I would say is that both these defenses have given up some plays and some points this year. Penn State gave up 38 points to App State, 24 points last Friday to Illinois. So I guess we'll get into this game and see if the Buckeyes can move the chains, get some first downs, put the ball in the end zone. They've been a machine in the first half of games this year, other than TCU, obviously, which in the second half they played lights out. But, yeah, I'm excited to see what this game brings, because it's going to be, in my mind, a real offensive shootout, I think, on both sides.
Steve Hillwagon joining us from Bucknuts. Steve, I saw a statistic last week, I can't believe it, that the linebackers did not make a tackle in last week's game. Is that true? Did you come across that?
Yeah, the starting linebackers, Malik Harrison, Tuff Borland, and the third one be Pete Werner. Those guys only played about a half. It was 42-6 at halftime. I think that Tulane had gone 3 and out on several of its possessions. There were a lot of negative plays. The defensive line made behind the line of scrimmage. I'm not sure that there were a lot of opportunities there for the linebackers. But they got those 3 guys who started, most of the starters, out of the game at halftime. They played the second half. And Ohio State outscored them 7-0 in the second half, won the game 49-6, and I don't think that they really had that much of a care who was out there in the second half. So, yeah, I think it's interesting, troubling, potentially. You're talking about a Penn State team. I think they rushed for 365 or 370 yards last week against Illinois. We know how much stress McSorley can put on a defense and on the linebackers in particular, when it comes down to keeping him hemmed in the pocket or stopping him on the quarterback draw. Those are 2 things the linebackers must be able to do, and they're going to be put on the gun. I think that that's no doubt about it. Miles Sanders has helped everybody kind of soothe the blow of losing Saquon Barkley. He's got almost 500 yards in 4 games himself, Miles Sanders. So Ohio State's linebackers are going to be tested. Penn State's got 3 pretty good tight ends. They lost Gesicki. But as I look here, they've got Holland, Dalton, and Freiermuth, who've all made plays early in the season, the tight end position. So Ohio State's linebackers are going to be put under major stress in this game. My guess is they're going to rotate players in and out. Dante Booker has played some good football here last week at outside linebacker for the Buckeyes. Baron Browning could be in the middle in place of Tuff Borland, or perhaps outside linebacker as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the Buckeyes rotate those linebackers, and most importantly, how well they play. This is the game of the year. You lose this game, I mean, it's an uphill battle to win the division if you lose this game. And you'd have to basically win out and hope that Penn State loses twice Now, there are losable games on Penn State's schedule. Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State. They've got some tough games ahead. Ohio State really got the benefit of the doubt on those crossovers. When you're talking about having to play Minnesota, Purdue, which has 1 win now, and Nebraska, which has no wins. So Ohio State really got the luck of the draw on that, but do have to go on the road this game at Penn State this week and have to go in there and really come out with a win if they're going to stay in the national championship hunt and really to have a realistic, a strong shot of winning the division.
Yeah, those crossover games are something that we reviewed and analyzed during the offseason. I looked at each and every team, actually went through the entire Power Five, but specifically in the Big Ten, if you think about it, obviously there are 3 crossover games. Those teams all played 9 conference games. So you've got 27 games against the other division. And there was as large a disparity as one team playing at 3 teams schedule from the other division, where those 3 teams last year went 20-7 in the Big Ten, as opposed to a 6-21 record for somebody who played 3 other teams. I just think there should be something done about that. But that's an off-season debate and discussion right there. So I didn't get the chance, Steve, to hear the news conference from Urban Meyer or James Franklin on Monday. Are the Buckeyes hobbled up? I know that Mike Weber was banged up a little bit. Any injury concerns?
Weber had a foot strain, and he only played a few plays against Tulane last week. He was injured when he went out of bounds, and a player rolled up on his ankle, and so he left that game and didn't play the rest of the game. But Coach Meyer said he's been back at practice. We saw him walking around after practice yesterday. Seemed like he was doing pretty good. So he's expected to play. I would imagine J.K. Dobbins will start and get most of the work. Michael would be there as a change-up back. They've moved DeMario McCall, who's been kind of a hybrid running back, wide receiver. He's been back at running back a little bit. They've got Master Teague there as well. So you got 4 pretty good players that they'll rotate, my guess, primarily Dobbins and Weber. But it sounds like Weber should be close to 100%. And other than that, the Buckeyes seem to be in great shape, other than obviously Nick Bosa is not going to play for a few more weeks. Underwent surgery last week on a core muscle to repair that, and seems like he'll be out till early November at least. So I guess it'll just be a wait and see thing with him. But otherwise, Ohio State seems pretty healthy going into this game.
Steve, your experience with Ohio State football just doesn't include the Big Ten stops, obviously, all the big non-conference games, the bowl matchups, and so forth and so on. That scene in Happy Valley with the whiteout, the crowd, the noise, what you experienced 2 years ago was probably at fever pitch compared to some other years. 2014 was a great game as well. Is that about as loud and fervent a road crowd, as you've seen in your experience?
Oh, it's number one. There's no question about it. When you talk about 107,000 people, and, the enthusiasm and the fervor that they generate, I mean, that setting at Beaver Stadium is probably number one on the list among all the visiting places I've been. I think Ohio Stadium obviously is a tough place for visitors to come in for a big game. I'm not sure it is for a run-of-the-mill game. Penn State's got it all over the University of Michigan. There's no question in my mind about that. Wisconsin can be a very difficult place to play for a visiting team, particularly for a night game. Iowa can be, as Ohio State found out last year, pretty hard place to play. But, I would say Penn State's got to be number one, certainly in the top 5 nationally, as one of the toughest places for a visiting team to play. And when you add in the night game, the whiteout, and everything else that involved with it, it's really off the hook. And, it's a fun place. And even Urban Meyer tipped his cap and said it's a great place to watch a college football game. He said, our goal will be going there to win the game. And certainly that's what Penn State's going to try and do as well. So it's going to be a fun one.
We benefit on a regular basis from the wealth of knowledge and insight into Ohio State football in the Big Ten from Steve Hellwagon. Bucknuts 247. You got to join him right there for the very best in Ohio State football coverage. Steve, we appreciate you stopping by, sir.
All right, Mark. Take care.